Hi, welcome back to the Weekly Why. This week we have a double parsha, a double portion from Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. So in the book of Leviticus, still we're discussing a lot of temple sacrifices, Mishkan, the tabernacle, a lot of laws dealing with the Levites and the Kohens, and a lot of information about just very nitty gritty some of the detail of the laws there. And as we mentioned in previous weeks, it can seem very dry and somewhat difficult to sink our teeth into and get any kind of messages and lessons, but I hope that there's a few that we can get from that. So, as I mentioned, the double parsha is Behar-Behochotai, and there's a couple key ideas I want to discuss. So one of them has to do with the Shemitah, the sabbatical year. So just a quick recap. Every seventh year in Israel, there's a law that the land cannot be cultivated, it has to lay fallow, right? So every seventh year, the land just has to be left alone. And so this following verse I'm going to read in a second, where Moses is talking to the people, because the people are obviously worried. If I told you you couldn't, cultivate your land every 7 years, you'd say, well, how are we going to survive? So the idea. So this is what Moses says. He says to the people, "And if you will say, what will we eat in the seventh year? Behold, we will not sow and gather in our crops. So I will ordain my blessing for you in the sixth year, and it will yield a crop sufficient for a 3-year period." In other words, Moses is saying to the people, don't worry about it. In the sixth year, so the year preceding the sabbatical year, it's going to produce a triple crop. So in other words, in the sixth year, it's going to produce enough for the sixth, seventh, and eighth year. So you're not going to lose anything at all. And so in the Midrash, which is a Jewish homily, there's Rabbi Yehuda. And he said that there was a verse in Psalms, Tehillim, which not related to this parsha, but there was a verse in Psalms, and it said, "Men of strength who fulfill his commands." That was Psalm 103. And he said this verse, which has men of strength who fulfill his commands, this verse in the book of Psalms, which is separate from this is talking about people who fulfill the Shemitah. He's saying men of great strength. What better description can you think of for people who let their land, a farmer who gets his entire living off the ground, letting his land just sit completely untouched for a full year? I mean, that's really a man of strength. So Rabbi Aaron Kotler, what he said was that at first glance it seems a little strange. I mean, how great strength is it really? I mean, this guy who was a farmer has just received a triple crop before his seventh year, I mean, it's not so hard. You might say, like, how hard is it really to maintain that great strength if you've just received something that's incredible, triple crop before? It's probably much more easier to have trust that you're going to survive the next year if that happens. But what Rabbi Kotler said was, these are called men of great strength not because they've received that, because, again, that wouldn't be it at all. But what happens is that oftentimes we often say that we're going to upgrade our spiritual commitment only if, the situation are right. I can keep Shabbat, if I get a job that pays enough so I don't have to work Saturdays. Well, I can keep the laws of kashrut, I can keep kosher. If there was something nearby. In other words, we often think that if the situation were more friendly to us or things were more accessible, that somehow that we would approach it better, or we would be more accommodating. What he's saying, Rabbi Kotler was saying, is that this verse in Psalms talking about these men of great strength. He's saying it's them, talking about them, not because the sixth year produces a triple crop, but because they show this determination, this commitment to keep to the commandments, keep to the mitzvahs, even beforehand, and that was the product of it, right? So in other words, the reason that they were the men of great strength was not because they received something on the third or the sixth year, the triple crop, but rather because they showed that commitment, they were doing it for the right reasons. And so that's sometimes, I think, a certain amount of clarity that we lack, where sometimes we think that's that's going to be too much for God to provide, or we don't think it's possible. So on one hand, we can say, okay, Rob, that's very nice. If we were provided with this kind of an open miracle, that's nice. If I can and really put my feet down and really put my commitment to something, it's gonna produce results. But where am I really gonna see some practical results of this? So hopefully this week also, this parsha gives another example. It's talking about some of the laws of giving charity. And it has the following verse. It says, talking about the mitzvah of giving tzedakah, or charities to other Jews. And it says, should your brother become impoverished and his means falter with you, you shall support him so he may live with you. Okay? So some of the rabbis took apart a couple words there where it says, should your brother become impoverished and his means falter with you. So they took that apart and they said it's interesting that it says his means falter with you. In other words, that he's not, standing there in the corner suffering, that this reflects a time when there's kind of a widespread poverty or widespread, economic suffering a lot of, throughout. So certainly that would be applicable in a time like today where there's a lot of, job shortages and things like that, where a lot of people are suffering across the board. And so the key lesson from this is that it's not just a matter of, giving to charity when it's, when it's getting better, or giving to charity when you're making a lot of money, or when things are looking rosy. Again, it's giving to charity because you have the commitment to do it. It's like the man with the Shemitah, the sabbatical year, right? Sure, how easy would it be to do that when you have a triple crop? Well, the idea is he's not that man. He's not a great man because he received the triple crop, because anybody could do that. He's a great man because he showed that commitment. The triple crop came as a result. So again, we can fall in the same footsteps as who King David in the Psalm is talking about. What is the word he's talking about? Men of strength who fulfill a command, right? This is men of strength who talk about the Shemitah year, who fulfill the commands. We can do the same thing. In other words, not waiting necessarily for the money to fall into our lap before we start giving to charity and helping other Jews. We take that step preemptively, and we can be that man of strength who King David talked about in the book of Psalms. There's actually an interesting parable by the Dubno Maggid. He was a rabbi from a couple hundred years ago. He talked about everything in parables. There's an interesting story. There's a poor man with a bindle, the little sticks with the bag on it. He was walking down a street, and there was a rich man on a carriage who came by. And he saw this man was really struggling, and he said, please come onto the carriage. I'll take you. You look like you're struggling. So he takes him onto the carriage, and this man, he's holding his, this huge bag. He's holding it. And the rich man says, why are you holding your bag? You can put it down on the floor of the carriage if you want. And the poor beggar says, well, you've already given me a ride in your carriage. I can't, burden you even further by the bag as well. And, the man laughs at him, and he, in a polite way, of course, he laughs at him, and he says, it's the same either way. It doesn't matter whether you put the bag down or you hold it with you. I'm carrying it either way. So hopefully the parallel there should be clear. In other words, the idea is that God's saying, I'm going to provide for you either way, whether whether the economy is strong or whether the economy is weak, you're going to be carried either way. So the idea is not whether we're going to survive. The idea is what are we going to do with the opportunities, could be financial, in terms of that are given in front of us. Are we going to use that in a positive way to help other Jews in this time of challenge? Or are we going to unfortunately miss the opportunity and only wait when things get better? So I hope that we can make the right decision there and follow what King David was talking about in the men of great strength as well. Okay? So best wishes, Shabbat Shalom, God bless.